Welcome to the Queen City Music Podcast, the podcast devoted to the local music scene in Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, here's your host, Matthew Ablan.
Hello and welcome to episode 45 of the Queen City Music Podcast. This episode of the Queen City Music Podcast is sponsored by Middle Sea Jazz, Charlotte's premier jazz club located at 300 South Brevard Street in Uptown Charlotte. Stop in for Thursday night jazz jams, gospel Sundays every third Sunday of the month, or bi-weekly Wednesdays for Remember Wednesdays. But if you prefer, stay in for the evening and watch their Saturday night live stream, where you'll have access to the best performances Middle Sea Jazz has to offer. And if you want the VIP treatment, get a Baby Grand membership, where life takes you to a higher note. Tickets are now available for Alexander Zonik on June 5th, Dwan Bozeman on June 11th and June 12th, and the Jeff Lauber Trio on June 25th and 26th. Make sure to visit middleseajazz.com for a complete list of events. This month, I'm happy to be speaking with violinist, singer, and songwriter Emanuel Wynter, who's been creating quite a buzz in the Charlotte music scene. I recently had the chance to see Emanuel live with the Jazz's Lead Ensemble at Middle Sea Jazz. Well, let me say, he did not disappoint. Emanuel's been making the rounds as the consummate sideman, but he's also been busy making music of his own. Emanuel Wynter, thank you for coming on the Queen City Music Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
So, Emanuel, I always start off the podcast the same way. I want to find out where our local musicians are from. Are you originally from the Charlotte area?
I am not, actually. I grew up in New York, and I moved down here when I was 11. That was 2007.
Okay.
So I've been down here for a while.
Okay. And I'm guessing, of course, you came down with the parents, and that's what brought you down. I'm sure you weren't packing your bags as an 11-year-old and making your way down here, were you?
No.
Charlotte, it's the promised land. I've got to get down to Charlotte. Let me pack my bags. Bye, folks. See ya. Yeah, I've met a few folks from some other musicians who moved down when they were younger. So it's not always up to us where we move to, is it?
No, not all the time.
So what's your musical background, Emanuel? Can you fill us in?
Yeah, well, I would say, from a young age, my mom did a really good job at exposing me to things. So we would go to concerts at the Lincoln Center, in New York. Mm-hmm. She'd take me to see classical concerts, jazz concerts, everything.
Okay.
And then in first grade, I started playing violin, and I did the Suzuki method. It's very popular among string players.
Right.
I did that coming up all at the same time, at the time I was listening to what every other kid was listening to, Radio Disney was the only radio channel that I was concerned about. Sure. And moving down here, started to get into, I guess, regular music, so I moved away from the music tailored to kids to, mm-hmm. Just music.
When you started playing violin, was that something that you had looked at? I mean, particularly since you started in first grade, did you say, Mom, I want to do that? Or was she like, hey, you know what? I think it's important for you to start doing some music. And she started you on violin. How did that get going?
Yeah, well, my mom knew that I was going to play an instrument.
Okay.
She was gonna sign me up for something. I happened to choose the violin. Okay. But if it wasn't violin, it would have been trumpet or saxophone or piano. Okay. My mom, she thought it was very important that kids learn music growing up. But yeah, the school I was going to had a violin class. It looked cool, and I was like, "Hey, Mom, I want to do that." And she signed me up, and then I had a good time, and then it went from just doing that class to also doing private lessons, and then it kind of took off from there.
Was there an age that you got obsessed with it? Because I know I talked to some instrumentalists, and it seems like at some point music really clicks with somebody.
Yeah.
And that age seems to be between like 11 and 13. And then like as a guitar player, when I started, it was around that age that I got into guitar playing and I really got obsessive about playing and learning. Did that happen for you?
I did. Well, I started violin at 6, and then when we did the private lessons, I was just like, all right. Well, like I said, we were doing the Suzuki method.
Yeah.
Right. So I was, I'd be working on like song 2 in book 1.
Yeah.
And then I'd be like, okay, I have song 2 down. Let's look at song 3, song 4, song 5. I would just go through the book to the point that my teacher was like, stop. Don't do that. We'll get there when we get there. Just relax. So yeah, I did have that moment. And I feel like that I had that moment again in high school when I started to branch out into like contemporary music. I was listening to a lot of like jazz and blues, and I was enrolled in a jazz program, and I was like, improvisation was just a very new concept to me. And I was just like, okay, I need to learn how to do this. I need to, get this down. I need to learn these standards,
We talked about that earlier because most violinists, they don't make a switch. I mean, they're in orchestra and they're playing classical stuff in school, and they never quite make that switch into playing other styles of music. But that was something we talked about, and that's what I love to see. I love to hear violinists when they're playing other styles. What got you to do that, to make that change from like, hey, I'm just doing Suzuki and I'm playing an orchestra at school, but I'm listening to this other music and I kind of want to try that on my violin. What made you do that switch?
It just really boiled down to me hearing music that really resonated with me and wanting to be able to join the party, so to speak. Like there's these guys making this really cool music, and I'm really digging it, and I'm like, well, I would love to do that too. And that's where it started. Right. That's what pushed me to branch out. And
okay.
Speaking of violinists, in non-traditional styles of music, I didn't even know of any at that point in time. Like Grappelli, like Lapani, like I did not know about those guys.
Really?
Until I was already, doing that. I was really taking inspiration from guitar players.
Huh.
These guys are really cool. They're doing cool things. So let me try and join in.
So when did you get in? When did you hear these other violinists that were kind of doing, paving the way, as it were, who had paved the way, like a Jean-Luc Ponty, as we talked about a little bit earlier?
Yeah, that came a couple months, couple years. Some guys I stumbled across before. It was a good while, and I've stumbled across Papa John Creech, who I would say is my favorite blues violinist. Stuff Smith, who is actually one of the first electric violin players.
Really?
He was doing stuff around I want to say he was active in like the 30s, a ways back.
Okay.
Don Sugarcane Harris, those guys, I sort of found out about after I'd already been, studying that kind of music. And it was really rewarding stumbling across them, because it's like, okay, like this is a thing. Like I'm not being weird by trying to do all this stuff with a violin. Like there are other guys doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not only classical. I mean, all you have to do is look at country music, and there's tons of fiddlers out there doing their thing,
That is true.
Me just being a grown up with rock, when I started getting into jazz, I mean, I got exposed to Mahavishnu Orchestra, and that was my first exposure to like a violinist, jamming out. I was like, whoa, what is this? I didn't know this was a thing.
Yeah.
So. So you're not only a violinist though. So we talked about it earlier. And you play a whole bunch of different instruments. So you're a singer-songwriter as well. And we talked about what a term I used, collecting instruments, because as musicians, we not physically collecting, a guitar and a bass, but, we start picking up other instruments to play.
Right.
And so when did that occur to you? When did that start to happen for you? as a violinist and getting into music?
I started my collection in middle school. I picked up keys in middle school, and that was just like, hearing songs on the radio. I'm like, all right, that's cool. Let me see if I can play that.
Right.
And then I picked up guitar in high school. I did a semester of band in high school as well, where I was playing sax, and I wish I stuck with it. I really wish I did. But I didn't stick with it, unfortunately. Right. I'd love to pick sax back up. It's a very foreign instrument to me, foreign from all of the other things I play, just because of the way everything's set up. And then I picked up bass sort of out of necessity. I was messing around with recording, not like seriously recording.
Right.
I would create loops on the guitar, and I'm like, well, I need bass now.
Gotta have it. Gotta have bass.
gotta have it. So that's what made me pick up bass.
Yeah, we were talking about the difficulties of being a bass player earlier, or whatever instrument you are, because maybe a lot of folks don't realize it, but if you're a violinist or a guitarist, the next instrument you pick up, you kind of approach it from that same angle, but it's a totally different vibe to be. I mean, I was talking about bass, and you had related it to the drums on your recordings.
Right.
And you said that was a completely different headspace for you to have to get into.
Yes.
So was there a particular instrument that besides the drums that were difficult for you, or?
Saxophone was the difficult one for me.
Yeah.
'Cause I feel like pianos are straightforward. That doesn't make them easy to play, but they're straightforward in the sense that like each note is a key. So you have a note here.
Okay.
You go from left to right and the notes get higher.
Right.
But saxophone is not set up like that. Like the buttons on the saxophone are also called keys, but it's like you have to hold 3 down here to make certain notes, and then if you stick your pinky out for this one, that does another thing. Like, it was just very, very, very foreign to me. Nevertheless, I still think it's a cool instrument. I'd love to pick it up one day. That was definitely the largest shift as far as like picking up another instrument. Bass is also kind of interesting because, or the way that I would approach like lines with my violin, you can't approach bass that way. Because if you look at the function of violin, right, and the function of bass are very different, right? The bass lays the groundwork, the foundation for everything above it. If you're playing violin, your job is to be melodic,
right. You're laying out on top,
right? But a bass's job is not really to be melodic, so you can't think of it that way. But I personally love playing bass. I think it's super fun. It's fun just like locking into like a nice groove, a nice feel.
Yeah. It's a different approach, definitely. So, Emanuel, when I first heard of you in town, we talked about you being a side person. So I think I saw you playing with Nate Randall and a couple of other groups on the side. But you've also made a switch more so now into your own thing. So what was that progression like for you? What made you start out playing with other people at first, being the side guy and laying down your talents, to saying, hey, you know what? I've got all this stuff inside me. I want to get out my own vision of my own music.
Well, I started doing open mics, I think my senior year of high school.
Okay.
Right before I went off to college. Yeah, I wanted to get out there. I wanted to play. I loved playing. I loved playing for people. So I'd just go to open mics and just see how comfortable I could get with it.
Right.
And then I ended up meeting a lot of folks who were like, hey, come play with me. So, I was excited about it. I didn't really start playing out till 2015, which actually was the summer after my freshman year of college.
Okay.
But I was doing a lot of that. I was basically a freelance, violinist, there were a few bands that I had locked in with, I was playing with regularly, but, I would play with a lot of people around town. But I knew I wanted to do my own thing, even back at that point.
Okay.
Even before then. But I didn't think I was ready for it at the time. So I would just play with folks. And then the catalyst that pushed me to really pursue doing my music was Shelby Stover in 9 Day Trip.
Okay.
Which is like a southern rock band that I play with. People call them Americana, but I just don't think that's...
Okay.
I'd say southern rock. We were doing a gig out in Kentucky, and we were in the van on the way to the show, and we were messing around, listening to music. I was like singing, like under my breath, and Shelby was like, "Wait a minute, you can sing. I'm gonna give you a mic." I'm like, "What?
Right?
What?" Like I wasn't singing at that point. I wasn't comfortable with it. But he was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna give you a mic." He started giving me a mic at shows, and I would sing harmonies, and got a little bit more comfortable singing harmonies. I'm like, okay. Well, I started singing. That was the last thing. So started writing, and I wrote Cosmos in 2017, and then from writing Cosmos, I was like, okay. That's when the process started. And then from there on, it was just me getting more comfortable and putting myself out there.
You mentioned Cosmos. That's one of your original tracks. Was that a single that you released, or did it come out on your full-length album these past few years?
It is the first single I released that I eventually put out on my album that I released in 2020.
Fantastic. I tell you what, can we take a listen to Cosmos?
Yeah.
And then you can fill us in about it in a little bit?
Sure thing.
All right, this is Cosmos by Emanuel Wynter.
You're a planet in transit, a cosmic allure, to which I've been granted a sight to be sure. Wished on that star as you passed it, and the answer was yours. I'd go light years on a tangent, to your orbit I detour, 'cause I know you're just passing by. Cherish these moments, I'll take my time. Let the sunlight adorn us and the cosmos align. We can slow dance in the light.
Emanuel, I really like that track. Can you fill me in about it? Because we talked about you playing multiple instruments. We briefly touched about recording. Were you recording at home? Did you do that all by yourself? Did you play all the instruments on the track? Fill us in.
I recorded it all at home. I played all the instruments, and I programmed the drums. That was a DIY project. I did send it out to Catalyst Studios to get mixed and mastered.
Okay.
Because I knew nothing about mixing and mastering back then.
That's hard, man. That's some tough stuff.
It's tough stuff for sure. I was still learning about like recording and doing all that. So I couldn't tell you how many times I recorded Cosmos and then deleted it and then recorded it again and deleted it. I was sitting on it for a long time too. I wrote it in September of 2017.
Okay.
And I didn't perform it for anybody until June of 2018.
What when you started recording it, what was the process? Did you come up with the violin first? Did you come up with the words first? What is your process? I mean, this may have been like the first thing, but what did you do first?
The first thing that came was the guitar, the da 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 that line right there was the first thing that came.
Okay.
And then I wrote lyrics to that chord progression. And yeah, that's how it came.
So are you like me when you do it? You come up with one part and then you just start kind of layering and like, how is this going to fit? How's that going to fit? And
yeah, so my process looks different depending on which song. But for Cosmos, I was like looping that main chord progression and writing to it. And then I had the chords for the chorus in mind. So I did that and wrote the chorus. And then that song was very easy to write. I don't know how that happened. Not every song is easy to write, but that one just came. I don't really know what happened there.
Well, some people say, I mean, I've listened to songwriters talk in there and they say, it's when you're writing, you're actually just kind of pulling it out of the air. Like, not that it's, but different songs are attracted to different musicians and different artists and you just start pulling it out.
Yeah.
And that's what, and it's a very strange process to describe songwriting because I don't know if there's anything else you can kind of describe in the same way. Maybe a painting, when a painter is starting to write, they don't see what is on the canvas. They don't have a head for it.
Yeah. I think that's a good metaphor, actually.
Well, I'll own it. All right. So when you do this, did you have a style that you had in mind? Were you thinking, hey, I want to do neo soul like we were talking about earlier, or were you thinking I want to write a country tune? Did you have a style that you want to start writing in the vein of, or is it just whatever comes out of you or that you pull out of the ether?
So I had spent time thinking about how I wanted to sound, and I was listening to a lot of Daniel Caesar in 2017, and when I discovered him, I was so excited because you could call the music he was making neo soul, and I was just like, this is pretty much the vibe I would love to have, like, soulful music, live instrumentation, stuff that's very like dreamy and ethereal. Like, that was definitely the sound that I wanted to go for. So I definitely had that in mind.
So Emanuel, the music industry today is kind of the Wild West, as I'll describe it, because I'm not really sure anybody has an idea of what's going on in the line of, there's no clear designated trail. There's a lot of independent artists because of the internet and because of record companies having their issues. My point being, you released a full-length album these past few years, the title of the album. And I've talked to different groups, different artists, and they release singles or they want to release an EP. Is there something that you wanted to do? Was there just an artistic statement that you wanted to do when you released a full-length album? Did you not want to do an EP or just release, an independent single when you started? What was your thought process there?
There wasn't really a thought process in the sense of like my approach to releasing music. I just knew that I wanted to release an album because that was an achievement that I wanted to be able to say that I did. Mm-hmm. there wasn't really a statement in it. I mean, the album itself is a very like reflective album, where I basically addressed all of the nostalgic feelings that I had floating around in my head.
Okay.
But as far as like the strategy of releasing music, there's no particular reason that I decided to put out an album as opposed to a bunch of singles, as opposed to an EP.
Okay. Well, because I asked because you released this full-length album, but now you've got your most current single released.
Right.
Is that part of a larger album, or is it just something you said, I wrote this song, I'm gonna put that out?
Yeah, that was a I wrote this song, I'm gonna put it out type of thing. I think to put music out there, I feel like is a big achievement to have, especially with all the time that you take putting work into the recording, the listening, the mixing and everything. That's definitely an achievement to put music out. I think from this point on, I'll probably be more intentional about how I put music out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, up until this point, yeah, the singles that I released after the album were just like, yeah, I wrote this and recorded it, and I'm ready to put it out.
Well, I'll tell you what, on that, can we listen to your most recent single, My Distant Love?
Yes.
All right, let's listen to My Distant Love by Emanuel Wynter.
My distant love, far as the morning sun, always out of reach, no matter how far I run. Trying to catch up to you, trying to keep your pace, just to have to catch my breath in your embrace. My distant lover, want this thing to be true. Just thinking about you. I need you out of my head and in front of me. To know you is to love you, babe. This much I have found.
Fantastic. Another awesome track, Emanuel. So, was this another one that you recorded in your studio at home? Did you have anybody else play on it, or was it all you again?
It was all me again.
Wow. I'm getting impressed, man. If I wasn't impressed before, it's kind of, you're up in the scale that you just keep doing everything yourself and it sounds so good.
Cool.
Were you, did you send it out to get mixed and mastered again, or was this something that you started now, getting into this new territory for yourself?
I sent this one to get mixed and mastered again to Catalyst Studios. The process of like learning mixing is kind of been an in-house thing for me. I haven't put anything out that I personally mixed yet. That might happen one day. I don't know. We'll see.
I don't think a lot of people realize it if they're not musicians doing this kind of thing. Like playing your instrument is one thing. Performing is another thing. But when you start getting to recording, that's still yet another thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's just so much for today's musicians to wrap their head around if they don't want to go to a studio and do it. Like I talked to, I had Michael Tracy on a few months back. So Michael's like, no, man, I use my home studio to do demos. And then I go to a real studio where they can, help me get all the recording done. And then you've got guys like yourself who will use your home studio, record all your tracks, but then send it off to somebody, to mix and master. And then you've got still yet another suit of guys like the guys from Pluto Gang. When I was talking to them, they recorded it, they mixed it, and they mastered it all themselves. So like, I don't think people realize how much work goes into it. Not even just the music portion, but doing all these other things.
All the other things. And then, if you're a DIY artist, like recording it, mixing it, mastering it is one thing, and even that thing is complex. And then you're talking about like putting it out, which is a whole other thing. Now you got to promote it, you got to market it. I know a lot of musicians who, in addition to recording, mixing, and mastering their songs, they also do the artwork. It's a whole lot.
Yeah, being an independent musician today, as wonderful it is that, we have all these options now. We don't have to wait for a record company to pluck somebody out and say, oh, we're going to give you the magic touch.
Right.
Which was never any guarantee anyway.
Right.
We were all able to do this ourselves and put out our own stuff, which is absolutely wonderful.
It is.
Emanuel, so I've kind of been on this kick lately about finding out how musicians are interacting with social media. So for someone like yourself who's a younger musician who's navigating this field, I've noticed that you are all over social media. So what role is it playing with you as an artist? How are you navigating that for yourself?
Well, I am trying my best to use social media as best as I can. Well, there are a few things that I have in mind when I do the social media thing. Of course, there's promotion, right? If you got a show, music coming out, promote that. Other than that, man, I try and give people a glimpse of just the stuff that I'm toying around with. So if I'm at home and I recorded a really cool loop, I might post a video of the loop or myself playing over it.
Right.
Might post some photos for some shows just to show people that if they missed.
Is it primarily music? Well, you're always I guess in social media, you're always trying to find your people, your audience. But I've seen different folks approach it differently. So it sounds like you are strictly music based with it in that sense for yourself, whereas a band might be like, hey, look at what I'm eating for breakfast, or, I was out on the walking trail today, or doing other things just to engage people. Are you doing any of that, or is it really just strictly music based?
I want to do more of that. I don't do too much of that. I probably should. I think I've read somewhere that that's like a good strategy.
Right. See, there's a thing. See, nobody really knows anymore.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what to do. It's almost like, let's just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. And if that sticks, I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
It's such a strange time to be a musician today. It really is.
It is very much so.
I will say this. I did learn something from you looking at your website. I came across Linktree, and I didn't know anything about that until I came across yours.
Linktree is crucial, man. Cause a lot of these social media sites, they only give you room for one link in your bio.
Right.
So you've got to make that link count. So, Linktree is really cool because you put that link in your bio and then somebody will click on it and they'll see all the various things that you have to share, right? So I think on there currently I have a link to my website, a link to my music, which is also on my website, but you make it easy for the people so they don't have to do so much. And then I have a link to the live stream show that I did at the Neighborhood Theater. I think there's a link to an article that Charlotte Culture wrote about me last year in there as well.
Yes, I read that, yeah.
But yeah, Linktree is crucial. It's a great tool.
Well, you sold me because I've got to now sign up for it and kind of get something rolling for myself on it. Because I've got, like you, I've got a couple of different things happening. So
it's free too. You can get a pro version, which I think you pay like $6 a month, but
right.
You don't need to get it if you don't want to. It's very much usable if you don't get the pro version.
All right, cool. I'm going to check it out a little bit more, get into it. So, Emanuel, I just saw you recently, a couple of months back, you were playing with Jazz is Lead.
Yes.
How'd you get into that?
I got into that because I play in another band with Curtis Winkfield.
Okay.
I play in 20 Ride, which is a Zac Brown tribute band.
Mm-hmm.
And, we were doing gigs, and he told me, like, hey, man, I got this project that I'd love to have you on. And he told me about it. I was like, sounds great. And then we got to rehearsing last year, December, to prepare for that show at Middle C.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, it was a great time. It was a really great time. We did 2 nights, and each night we did 2 shows. It was a good time.
It was a fantastic show. I think everybody who was there thoroughly enjoyed it. One of the things that I really found fun to do is listen to the song and figure out which Led Zeppelin tune you guys were going into, because it wasn't always obvious.
Yeah.
It's not if anybody's listening and you haven't seen Jazz is Lead, it's not a Led Zeppelin cover. You know what I mean? It's not always,
right.
It's not always in your face. You guys will take a tune, and you'll change out the rhythm and warp it, and then it's like, what? Oh, that's what it is. Oh my gosh, they're going into Stairway to Heaven. Like it was really interesting to have to put your ear around.
Yeah, the arrangements were really fun to work out, and we've been rehearsing over the past couple weeks because we're actually going to go to the studio and record some of our arrangements.
So you guys are going to be releasing an album of it?
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome. Any idea when well, you guys haven't gotten to the studio yet, you said, but any idea when the targeted date might be for release?
I don't know the timeline. Curtis probably has a timeline in his head, but I don't know what the timeline is.
Okay. Yeah, if I got to speak to Curtis, because I spoke to him at the Jazz is Lead show, and got to get him on the podcast soon enough, and we can talk about that and the other things he's doing.
For sure.
And then I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it that I caught your live stream, your Queen City live stream from the neighborhood, live from the neighborhood theater. Can you fill everybody in about how that happened?
Yeah. So I noticed that they were doing a live stream series, I think back in fall last year.
Okay.
Because a few of my peers had gone on there. And I was like, man, that's so cool. I wanted to do one, and I didn't really know who to contact. But then Jason reached out to me, and we set up a date. And I called up the guys to do that show with me, and it was just a great experience. Really, really fun. Even though, the only people in the room were the musicians and the production team, it still felt very lively. So,
did it feel like a live show, or did it feel more like a produced rehearsal?
I think I was super excited, so it felt like a live show to me.
Okay.
Also, I had never played at the neighborhood theater before, and I'd wanted to do that for a while. So the whole thing was really cool to be able to get to do. Definitely a pinpoint in sort of the growth process of a solo artist. So
absolutely.
Yeah, but the show felt really good, and they gave me the audio and video, so I posted everything to YouTube. I chopped up the song, so it's song by song. For anyone who missed it, who would like to see it,
go check it out. So, Emanuel, since you mentioned it, how do we get in touch with you if people want to find out more about Emanuel Wynter and the things that you're doing? And we mentioned Linktree, but how do we get in touch with you? Because I know you're all over the place.
Yes,
with social media, but
yes,
where do we go?
So the main thing I use is Instagram.
Okay.
And I am on Instagram at Eman the Man with 2 N's at the end.
Okay.
I had to make that point. So that's EMANTHEMANN. So that's my Instagram. I'm on Facebook at Emanuel Wynter Music. Of course, my website would be EmanuelWynter.com.
And that's Winter with a Y if you're just listening.
And that's Winter with a Y. Very important detail.
And Emanuel's got one M in it, not two.
Another very important detail.
Hey, Emanuel, so what do you have coming up in 2021? We're kind of restrictions for COVID are relaxing. All of us musicians are trying to get out and perform more. What do you have coming up? This podcast will be released in early June. Do you have an idea of what's coming up for you in the coming months?
Yes. So I've got a show at the Blind Tiger in Greensboro.
Great venue.
On June 10th. Yeah, I'm super stoked about it. I'll be on the bill with Bad Cameo. They're a band that was established in Charlotte, but I think they're in Florida now. Okay. But they're working on getting some shows in North Carolina, and they reached out to me about the Blind Tiger on June 10th, which is a Thursday. So if anybody is listening who lives in Greensboro, come see us. If you don't live in Greensboro and you like driving, come see us. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And I'd love to get some more stuff on the books for 2021. Hopefully there's new stuff that happens between now and then.
Hey, Emanuel, thank you for coming on today, man. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and hopefully I'll get out at some point and see you again. Like I said, it was a pleasure seeing you guys with Jazz is Led, because that was a fantastic performance, and I hope you guys get out and do that a little bit more so that other folks can hear that.
I would love to. Thank you for having me.
All right, Emanuel, have an awesome day.
Thank you. You too.
And that will bring episode 45 of the Queen City Music Podcast to a close. If you have an idea for an episode or would like to be a guest on the QCMP, reach out to me at qcmusicpodcast@gmail.com. Also, please check out our local partners, Records on the Wall at rexonthewall.com and Reporting from 20XX at reportingfrom20xx.wordpress.com. Until next month, be well and stay safe.